Hello and welcome back to the Black Dad Brand Podcast. I'm your host, Jamil Pugh, and I'm back with Ray Green. And we're going to talk specifically about reproductive health today. And so Ray's going to talk to us about Black Dad Brand decisions, birth plans. And so, Ray, can you explain to us what does it mean to have a birth plan? And then kind of go into your presentation and kind of give us like an in-depth description of how this can help, a father to be support their partner in delivery.
Yes, most definitely. Thanks for having me on again. A birth plan is exactly what it sounds like. It's a plan for a birth. It's what you expect to see and happen while um, the mother's given labor. And it includes a couple of different things, which we'll talk through in just a moment. But it's very, very helpful. Oftentimes some people may not have planned to be pregnant at the moment. If you have or you haven't, there's some areas to kind of help de stress, help mom, help you as a future dad out, and that's a birth plan. It's making that blueprint and that effort. So we're going to get into that because that's actually the first slide that we're going to talk about today. What is a birth plan? So a birth plan, also known as a birthing plan. Now, this is a plan sometimes referred to as a birthing plan, but it's really a blueprint. Before you build a house, you have to put kind of like where does things go, which they call blueprint. And it's a blueprint of what choices you and your partner have made for the arrival of your child. It's really to make sure that it helps not just you as dad, not just her as mom, but really everybody involved, the nurses, the labor coach, the midwife, the doula, whoever may be in there to support you. It's really helping you to have a successful, but most importantly, a healthy, preferred labor and delivery in the best possible way. And I know you may be thinking, like, well, where do I start? What's included? Why do I even need one? And for me, if you watched any other episodes, it's really about being prepared. A lot of times, if you're a first time dad, it's nervous. Everything is nervous, anxiety's high. Our role and our job is to make sure that mom to be is feeling 100% well, low stress at all times. And if we want to be engaged fathers, if we want to be engaged dads, one of the things I always want to point out is a birth plan is one of those ways that you can be educated, engaged, and equipped. And I say these three E's specifically because you got to be educated. One of the things that we want to implore to everybody who's watching and who will be sharing this is that you want to be educated. You want to know what options do you have as a father, as a mother to be, what options do you have during labor? This will also help you engage as a Black dad to be engaged in the labor process, understanding what's needed, what do you prefer to happen, and it'll give you the equipping to actually advocate a little bit better. I know when my wife and I were having our first daughter, the birth plan came into effect because we were able to advocate. We wanted a natural birth, and we were able to advocate because there's some things that are critical in your choices for what you want to prefer to happen when you get there. And we'll cover some of those in just a moment, but always want to be equipped, always want to advocate on behalf of mother to be. You're really there to support her and the entire experience, but it also tells others what it is that you want to do. And when we talk about that, there's a couple things that also benefit Black Dad. I put plans here. Part of your role's plan. You want to be prepared and confident. So here are some of the basics around what actually goes into a birth plan. Couple things. One, who's your support? You want to talk to the mother, your wife, or the mother to be, and ask, who do you want in this space? Talk to your midwife, your doula, your hospital, the care, wherever you may want it to have, and really ask them what are their procedures and practices on that, what policies, how many people can be in the room, who's going to be in the support. Then you also want to have a plan during delivery. Now, delivery is not just pushing out the baby. Delivery involves a lot more than that. There's a time frame between when you're actually going into labor and what you can do. We're going to talk about that. And then pain management. Yes, fathers, it is painful. From my wife's experience, from research, they say it's usually about a 10 out of 10, one of the worst pains that you could ever experience as a human being. So you want to talk through what kind of pain management do you prefer? And we're going to hop into that. Then you want to talk about environment. What vibe do you actually want to set? And then we'll get into afterbirth. So support team. This is your opportunity to have that communication. We always talk about this, but we rarely do it. Communication is key. So when you're making a birth plan, this does not happen at the time of delivery. This should happen months, maybe even weeks prior to. You take that sit down and you ask, who do you want in the room? You're asking the mom, like, who should that be? Um, do you want your doula in there? Do you want your midwife if you happen to have one? Do you want your husband or your partner or the father to be? Do you want your grandmother or your mother? Who do you actually prefer to be in that space? You don't want somebody that's going to get on your nerves. You want somebody that's going to support you and your soon to be family at that time. That's critical because it also tells the nurses, the doctors, and everybody else that's helping deliver this baby your preferences. It can get very very packed in that room, depending on where your medical care is taking place. Those rooms are pretty conducive, but they can also get tight depending on the situation. A lot happens. A lot of people are coming in and out, but it's important that you communicate beforehand. Who do you prefer to be in that space? Now, the other part of this is during labor. So once mother to be is going through contractions, I'll have to do another video to talk about how to actually time contractions. But you don't want to get to the hospital too soon. But when you're in during labor, you kind of want to talk about what do you want to do? Do you prefer no medications in the natural sense, like me and my family did? Free movement. Studies show that women who are allowed to actually move freely during labor have shorter and less painful labors. And this is all conducive to your preferences. So as you're getting educated, as you're going to the classes, you want to look like, what are my options at this specific hospital at this specific time? Do I want a natural water rupture? Oftentimes during labor, it takes hours for that for the woman to dilate to the point of delivery. And this is all if you're not having a cesarean. But sometimes the water, that the amniotic fluid that protects the baby, it can prolong the process as well. And sometimes they will offer you, and it can seem almost forcefully offer you, whether or not you want them to rupture your water to help speed along the process. But premature rupturing of the bag water does not guarantee labor, and it can also lead to increased pain for the mother, as well as more intense contractions and increased risk of infection. But that is possible. That is very doable. If you and your family prefer to do that, you can definitely choose to do that. And then there's this thing called intermittent monitoring. When my wife was going into labor, we waited at home. By the time we got to the hospital, she was well above 5, 6 centimeters, or I think it might be centimeters or inches dilated. I can't really remember. I think it was centimeters dilated, or inches. Y'all fact check that. But part of what happened during that time was they had to hook up all of these monitors. They want to monitor the baby's heart. They want to monitor the mother's heart. They want to monitor everything, because safety is key for not just the baby, but also for the mother as well. And if you didn't understand that, you wanted to figure out, okay, what kind of monitoring do we want to have? What opportunities and options do we have while they're monitoring? If I want to move freely, do they have options for that? It's a different type of monitoring. You may not be strapped to a bed. You might have something like my wife had that you can walk with, while they have the 12 on you to actually monitor your heart rate as well as the baby's heart rate. During labor, this is an opportune time. You do the breathing classes, you do all of that, but it's nothing like during labor. It definitely encourages you, it equips you, but they have a lot of different opportunities. Some may want to get in the bathtub during labor to ease some of the pains, as well as to get some of that mother contractions monitored and put down. Some might want to use a bounce ball, open up the hips, open up the cervix to help with the baby as the baby's transitioning down the birthing canal. What positions do you want to actually have when you're in active labor? Some may want to lay on their back. Some may want to have a bar. You may want to actually have a mirror so you can see all of these different things. You, as a husband, as a Black dad, you can ask these questions, and these are all conversation starters that you can have There's no clear cut way of how to have a baby or how to deliver a baby. It's totally up to you. You may want a bar to hold on to, and she may want to squat. My wife had multiple positions on her knees, whatever at the moment felt comfortable to her. We knew she wanted natural. We knew she wanted to have the ball to open up her hips during that time. We knew she wanted to get on her hands and knees for a certain amount of time, and then get on her back as well. So get educated about the positions, because all of that goes into your birth plan if you so desire. So it tells the hospital and those who are caring, what do you actually expect and what do you prefer to happen. The other is about pain management. Now, dads, I know your words of wisdom can definitely help, but when they get to that heightened level of pain, it's a different level that we can't, I would say, experience as men. So as a black dad, pain management, you also want to talk through this. They're gonna give you a lot of options. It's all for the benefit of your wife, but depending on what it is that you prefer and what she prefers, there's a lot of different options. Now, these are just a few options that I'm going to talk through. These are not all of them, but you can decide whether you want an IV or you don't want an IV. And this can be an IV drip in the sense of my wife, because we wanted to move around freely. This can be nitrous oxide, which is relatively safe way to help women cope with pain during labor, but it can be used during all stages of labor. There's Pitocin, there's morphine, there's I would say a healthy dose of fentanyl, as well as an epidural. Now, most of us, we know the needle in the back, epidural, to really have some regional anesthetic so that the mother's not feeling anything at that moment. And again, depending on your preferences, I'm going to give you my specifics experience. My wife wanted to go all natural, no medication. She wanted to manage the pain between breathing, listening to some gospel music, and me coaching her. This is all during the pandemic. Now, when we got there, that was part of our plan. When we got there, part of it was really making sure that the doctors stuck to that. Now, when it comes to pain management, you can also prefer them not offer pain medicine at all during that time, unless you ask. Unless you ask, and you want to have a choice. For us, we had a code word to determine, okay, babe, I'm gonna coach you in this, because at that time during the pandemic, we had nobody in there. It was literally just me. I'm going to coach you through this pain management. We'll do our breathing. I'll speak loving and kind words to you during that time. But at that time, those who were attending kept offering, and they kept offering, and I had to kindly ask them. This is the advocacy and being equipped. Kindly ask them, hey, do you mind not actually prescribing or encouraging any pain medication at this time? We really want to go all natural. Unless we ask you, then we feel like that would be a natural thing for you to come in and ask us. So those are just some things to be mindful of at the point of time. Too, with our second children, we actually had twin boys, and we had a C-section. Now that's a little different. C-section, you actually have to have medication. So my wife did have an epidural, and with that as well. So just get educated on the different options of pain management that you and she prefer. Now I want to talk about environment. And I'm almost finishing up as well. So part of the environment is, what vibe do you want to set in the hospital setting? Now you can choose, depending whether or not you're having a cesarean or whether or not you're just giving birth in the traditional sense of labor vaginally. But for us, we wanted to make sure that we had music. Do you want water running? Do you want, what kind of music do you want running? There's meditation music. There's all kinds of music. Do you want no music at all? Do you want it to be a funny environment? Do you have a show that you want to listen to specifically? A lot of places have TVs. You can bring in certain DVDs or certain things. They can have earphones on, wireless ones, to make sure that it's they're listening to what they want to listen to at the time as well. Do you want it quiet? part of the birth plan is this. It's a lot of people coming in. They're going to make sure that they talk to you. They're going to have a lot of questions. They may come in loud, or do you want it loud? Do you not really care? These are kind of like the little icings or the little sprinkles on an ice cream sundae, if you would. They're not necessary, but they could definitely help. Again, you always want to create an environment that's safe, healthy, and conducive for you and your the mother to be. The other part is photos. So, do they allow cameras? Do they allow photography in the room? Who's taking those photos and photography? When are those being taken? Some women that I know, they wanted makeup. They wanted their makeup. They wanted their hair to be done. They wanted all of that. And the father's role to be was just to hold the fan and make sure the mom was cool at all times. Some of it was rubbing ice down their back during the time to keep their body from getting overly heated. But this is all a part of the environment. And what's beautiful about this is you have the opportunity to really set what that looks like. I would encourage during your visit to the hospital, wherever you decide to give birth at, to take a walk through the actual location, go through the labor unit and look at the space, look at what's available, what's not available, and plan out and ask them questions. What would work, what wouldn't work. For us at the time when my wife was giving birth, we knew we wanted to have music. We knew we wanted to have instrumentals. We knew we wanted to have music. We knew we wanted to have a camera. But because it was just me, our doula couldn't come in with us. Her mom couldn't come in with us. Her mom had to sit in the car, and I had to literally video and phone everything while I was also supporting my wife at the time and advocating all in one. So I became it all. This is important because as a husband, as a father to be, as a Black dad, your presence matters as well. And oftentimes they may ignore you. And this is where I also want to set the environment that when they walk in, you also, lovingly encourage everybody that you are the one who may be in charge at that time. I had to kind of take on that role. Your situation may be totally different, and that's okay. But at that time, my wife didn't feel like talking. My wife didn't like a whole lot of talking at that time. She preferred them to talk to me. So it's good to be educated, equipped, as well as engaged at that time. But environment is key. Lastly, after birth. So this is immediately after birth. You can tell them what it is that you want to do. There's a lot that could happen after birth. Here are just some of the things I wanted to mention. Obviously, there's a lot more. You can request immediate skin to skin. This is like kangaroo care. Once the child is born, you can literally take the child and place them on your chest as a mom. You want to encourage that. There's benefits to that. It's not limited to improved breastfeeding, improved fetal health, improved mental health for mama, and improved bonding overall. You too also want to get that time with the child as well. During that time, once the child is born, you also have the option of who's going to cut the cord. Do you want delayed cord clamping? Oftentimes, I think this is something new that a lot of people are finding out, that if you allow delayed cord clamping, meaning you actually wait a while to cut the cord, there's some benefits to that. Red blood cells, stem cells, white blood cells, and other necessary substances to pass from the cord to the newborn and cutting the cord. I remember cutting my daughter's cord, and it was just a beautiful thing. And we also opted to go for delayed cord clamping as well. Now, this one's a little controversial, but you can save the placenta, totally up to you. Some mamas want to have their placenta so they can eat it. Nutritious facts. I'm just putting out the information, but you can definitely decide what you want after birth. And I also want to say this to fathers too. So once the child is born, there is another contraction that expels the placenta. And the placenta is where the nourishment came from for your child while in the womb. So there's that other process of I don't want to say birthing, but there's that other process of passing the placenta as well. And again, I had the opportunity to cut the cord. Great way to give you as a father your role to fill that. I think every person wants that opportunity, or if you desire that opportunity to cut the cord, they will give you the honors to cut the cord. Now, if you want to fight about an innie or outie belly button, I don't have answers for that, but you have the option to cut the cord, and you can let them know that. Some birth plans also include you to catch the child. Depending on the situation, I wanted the people attending to my wife to actually do all of that. I didn't want to risk it at that moment. And then lastly, again, just a few, you could opt to breastfeed immediately. This will help with bonding between you and mom, as well as baby and the entire environment there. But breastfeeding ASAP. And I'm gonna give in a little bit story as well. So my daughter, she was our firstborn. She was born naturally, no medication, came out immediately skin to skin. She had all of this white stuff on her, and it was called vernix. This is what protects them while in the womb from the amniotic fluid. It has a lot of like antibacterial stuff. It has a lot of positive benefits. Moisturizer. I didn't know what happened. I didn't know what was on my daughter at the moment, but they put her chest to chest with my wife, and we requested what they often call the golden hour. It's 1 hour after birth where you spend with your child. No medication given to the child, no ointment in the eyes at the moment. You can just select all of that after birth, but just a full hour of just spending time and bonding with your child before they poke, before they monitor, before they check, all of that. And it was a beautiful moment. And I would encourage everybody to take advantage of that if you happen to have a healthy birth and a healthy pregnancy as well. The other part about that was after I cut the cord, they were able to take now they're able to take my daughter away and do all of what I mentioned before. Um, and I would encourage you too. There are medications that they do for the child, so don't get worried if somebody comes and they're wiping your child down, or they're now measuring them, they're weighing them, they're wanting to give them potassium shots. You can select in your birth plan too. Actually, I don't want my child to be poked immediately at that moment. You can select potassium drops. They'll just drop them in the child's mouth, about three or so drops, or three or so periods that they'll do during that time, without actually puncturing or doing any sampling on your child at that time. So just get educated. There's a lot that happens after birth as well. Get educated. Let yourself know what other options do you have afterwards. Talk to your clinical care team. Talk to whoever may be helping deliver the child in the labor unit, and just get really, really familiar with the labor unit as well. Lastly, I want to go over birthing plan do's. My wife's a teacher. I oftentimes say, don't do this, don't do that. But she's like, what should you do? And just stick with that. So I'm going to stick with that. Number one, keep it simple. Keep it simple. Um, the main things we kind of covered, but just keep it simple. There's a lot of different medications. Keep it simple. A lot of different options of what to do during. Keep it simple. And after, keep it simple. A lot of the people that are in that specific space prefer it to be simple. They don't need a 3-page document handed to them. Um, you can make easy read bullet points or use logos specifically. I remember at one of our other children's births that they actually had logos on the wall, which I thought were pretty cool. We didn't want an episiotomy or cutting of the vaginal area at any moment. We just would rather have a natural tear, just heals better. And they had all of these different logos up, no eye ointment or whatever it is. But just keep it simple. Use easy to read bullets. There's tons of templates out there that you can definitely use. I would encourage you all to look up which one fits best for you. And I would say don't allow them to be cookie cutter, but allow them to be conversation starters between you and your wife, or you and the mother to be. The other part is avoid condescending tones or rude tones when actually sharing it. Remember, this is all about preferences. So it's not what should happen. There's a lot of variables that take place in labor. And you should be well aware of that, as well as everybody in that environment. Now, for us, our OBGYN did not deliver our child. We came in the middle of the night, and it was some people that we had no idea who they were, but we still trusted them. Now, when we were sharing our birthing plan, they'll ask you when you get there too, hey, do you have a birthing plan? What do you expect? Now you can either print that out, you can hand it to them, or depending on where you go in the labor unit, like I said, they may have a wall and they'll just check certain things off. And you can add certain logos, you can add certain things depending on where you're at. But I want to say this: remember that these are preferences. Your plan is a preference. Things can go differently, and that's okay. Remain flexible. At the end of the day, it's not about you sticking to a plan, but it's actually about you sticking to the health and the safety of the mother to be as well as the child. So making sure that that happens and occurs. When we had our twin boys, you planned, right? We knew that we weren't going to be able to do natural at this time. Our one of the childs was actually turned upside down, or not upside down. That's the actual right way. One of our children was twisted or in a wrong position, where I think they would have been born feet first. I forget the actual term of that, but we had to get a C-section, and we had to get educated because I wanted to be engaged. What do they do in a C-section? What do they provide pain wise, medically? What's allowed? What's not allowed? I couldn't take my camera in there. They didn't allow me to videotape or record any of it because they're actually an active surgery. A lot of it they did prior to me. They put me in a room. I felt somewhat excluded. I knew my time would come to be there for my wife. And I remember when I walked in there, one of the things that I wanted to do was cut the cord. I cut the cord of my daughter. I wanted to cut the cord of my two boys. But in a C-section, in that moment, we didn't have the opportunity to. They cut the cord, but it was still beautiful. We were flexible, and the most main thing in my mind at that time was continually asking. I was playing the position of the ear because that's the only place I could. Everything else, they had a sheet up from I think the stomach all the way down. So I just played in my wife's ear. I asked her what kind of music she wanted to listen to. We played that. We did not give birth on the due date that they told us. It was a little bit early, around 36, 37 weeks. It was a routine check-in, so we didn't even anticipate giving birth that day. So plans can go crazy at that time, but just remember, just remaining flexible. It's about the health of the mother as well as the child, and children in my case. So just remain flexible. Your future father, it's a beautiful process. Sticking with a plan helps you stay equipped and ready as well. So these are just some things to do for a birth plan. And I also want to share a last picture. I always share this too, but it's a picture of my family now. I'll have to put some new photos up that we just did recently. Won't announce who took those, Jamil, but appreciate you.
Absolutely,
But
absolutely.
yes, these are just some of the photos too. Those are twin boys, my wife and my daughter as well.
So, excellent presentation, brother. We really appreciate all the content that you shared. I think it was phenomenal. And like you said, the main point is like stay flexible. And the point is about making sure that your partner is healthy and safe, right? And not
Mm-hmm.
that, we come in with our own plans and, we want this or that. But at the end of the day, what's going to give the best opportunity for the baby to be delivered healthy and for the mother to stay safe. So, and I think for myself, having two children, being able to be in the delivery room supporting both times, and we actually had a doula that supported us through our delivery, and so, I think, we all handle it differently. I was more nervous, doing this work within maternal health for the past 6 years, knowing all of the different outcomes and the disparities that happens for Black women. I just wanted things to be safe, right? And the first time we labored for about 7 hours before we took the epidural, and then we all took a nap and kind of waited. And then the next morning, my daughter was born. The second time, my son, from the time we got into the delivery room, um, my son was born 15 minutes later, right? And the second time we had much more flexible options in terms of birthing positions, the type of support. And we were really lucky because the nurse actually wanted my wife to get on her back, but the doctor told her, no, it's okay. Let her labor in the way that she wants to. So we really appreciated that part of the process. Um, while we wanted our doula to be there in the room as all these things were happening leading up to it, um, our doula got caught up in the security line and was having a hard time
Yes.
access to the room. So she literally walked in as we were like delivering, but she was able to, talk to me in my ear on my headphones so I can talk to my wife and ask certain questions,
Yeah.
calm me down, be it was just so helpful to have a doula to kind of work with me and my wife, and then when she got there, the aftercare and all those things was great, and then when my son was born, it was one of those things where he was birthed so fast that they had to kind of assist his breathing, to get him jump started, but um it's a lot going on. So when we talk about being prepared, right? You want to know as much as possible so that you don't freak out and kind of lose your cool, and you kind of understand why things are moving so swiftly, what's coming next, and you're not necessarily asking questions because sometimes there may be, I won't say an emergency, but there may be a time where the nurses and the doctors are having to focus on delivering the care versus explaining to you. And so the more you know, the more that you can be prepared, the more that you can understand the process, and then the things that you want to advocate for. I think it was beautiful how you mentioned the golden hour, and we requested that too. Um, One thing I didn't understand about the golden hour is I thought they washed the baby off first before they hand them to you, but they just hand them out and put them right into your chest. And so I was like, oh, okay. And so by the time my son was born, I was a little bit more prepared for that golden hour, skin to skin time. But it's an absolutely incredible moment where you just like you are first meeting your children and they're able to kind of have that moment of bonding. um, but yeah, this was incredible. I would also say in terms of a birth plan, um, fathers really think about, we talked about the support, but also think about like logistics, you know where when you get to the hospital, where you're going to park, do they have valet, what floor do you need to check in on, when you first get there, there's also the triage part of it where you're sitting in a room, she's in a room with another other women who are potentially getting ready to deliver, and you're waiting in the waiting room. And so who might you need to call to handle different things? Do you have other children at home that may need to be picked up or cared for? In our case, our daughter, we needed to make sure that she was okay. And then, like, when you're in there, you might be in there for a while, you know, where are you going to get food from? Or there's just so many other different things. So think through it. I would say have a plan that's flexible enough, to the extent of the last like 4 weeks would be my recommendation in a sense. Because, like you said, you went in and it was a routine checkup and you end up delivering that day, right? It's
Right.
not like, well, hold on, doctor, let me go get my bags I got at home. You know what I mean? And then come back and then we can do this. And so
Yep.
maybe having stuff in, either of your cars so that if in the case you are, you know, have to rush for delivery, or someone who can take care of things, who's always on call to be ready to support you in the delivery of your child. So um ideally, Ray covered some amazing topics for a birth plan, but there's other things that you may see that you may need to plan for. Make sure to include that in your birth plan. So but thank you guys
Yeah.
for all paying attention and staying with us on this Black Dad Brand journey of parenting. We wish you the absolute best with your delivery, and make sure to tune into our website, follow us on social media, and look us up on all the podcast platforms. You'll be able to find our content. So thanks again for staying with us, and Ray, we really appreciate your content today.
Appreciate you for having me.
Alrighty.